Good morning and welcome to TVP World News. My name is Diana Skaya. Russian airstrikes hit the Ukrainian port city of Odesa overnight, damaging civilian infrastructure and a gas pipe. Residential areas and a garage were damaged due to the strikes, but no casualties were reported, according to emergency rescue personnel. The drones also hit a gas pipe, which ignited a fire, which was then quickly extinguished. 3 units and 12 firefighters were involved in putting out the fire and mitigating the consequences of the attack. In contrast, a combined heat and power plant in Russia's Voronezh was reportedly attacked overnight. Powerful explosions have been reported in the city. Now, the governor of Voronezh reported Sunday morning that a Ukrainian drone attack had disrupted heating supplies and led to power outages in parts of the city. The Russian Defense Ministry says it downed or intercepted 44 Ukrainian drones overnight. Now, Ukraine has recently stepped up missile and drone strikes inside Russia, targeting Moscow's refineries, power stations, and logistics hubs. In response to Russian hybrid attacks on Europe and Moscow's, quote, phase 1 preparations for a conflict with NATO, it's increasingly questioned why the EU is so open to allowing Russian citizens to visit member states. Well, that's about to change as the bloc tightens the rules on Russian nationals traveling to the European Union. Anastasia Yanchenko explains in this next report.
Beware, Russian passport holders! The European Commission has tightened the rules for issuing multiple entry Schengen visas.
This means Russian nationals will have to apply for a new visa each time they plan to travel to the EU.
The decision comes as Moscow, now in its 4th year of full-scale war in Ukraine, has been waging a broader campaign of sabotage and hybrid warfare aimed at destabilizing Europe and NATO. Poland remains one of Russia's primary targets, facing hybrid attacks across multiple sectors, including banking and critical infrastructure.
We have more than 1,000 incidents daily. It's more than 2 times more than 2 years ago. Those perpetrators and hackers are using more and more sophisticated tools.
The threat isn't limited to hybrid warfare. According to Poland's internal security agency, 55 people of different nationalities were detained in recent months for carrying out acts of sabotage ordered by Russia.
Russia often carries out acts of sabotage through proxies. In a recent case, a Colombian national arrived in Europe and traveled to Poland, where he set fire to 2 construction warehouses in Warsaw and Radom.
Furthermore, a growing number of Ukrainians have been detained in Poland for their ties to sabotage and terrorist groups. Recently, 3 individuals were imprisoned for their involvement in Russian-directed arson attack that destroyed a Warsaw shopping mall in 2024.
It's not a coincidence that in majority of cases of those disposable agents in Poland, Ukrainians were perpetrators. Russian aim was to blame Ukrainians, to raise a fear among Polish society that Ukraine is trying to drag Poland into a war.
The complexities do not end there. The Polish border guard reports that the number of Russians entering Poland has grown steadily, from 62,000 in 2022 to nearly 80,000 by September 2025, despite Poland's decision to restrict the movement of Russian citizens and close several border crossings.
Annual updates to the regulations have allowed more groups to enter Poland. Currently, entry is permitted for students, scientists, holders of permanent or temporary residence permits, Russians working in Poland or abroad, those married to EU citizens, and diplomats.
The latest controversy in Poland was sparked by a new bus route between Warsaw and Kaliningrad, one of Poland's 8 direct links with Russia. Most routes operate daily, and for Russian travelers, the connection remains both convenient and popular.
With entry restrictions in place, fewer people are crossing the border. I cross this border regularly and rarely encounter long lines.
Does it pose a threat to Poland? Experts and government officials are divided on the issue.
This channel may be used by Russia to infiltrate Polish territory with sabotagers or people with other intelligence tasks to commit on Polish soil.
The threat is Russia's aggression and Mr. Putin's regime. This threat stems from the actions of Russian intelligence services, not ordinary Russians.
But whether or not ordinary Russians are a threat, they now have to face a new reality and cope with a new level of European restrictions. For TVP World, Anastasia Yanchenko.
Ukraine's military technological advancements are proving crucial when it comes to European defense and offer an excellent investment opportunity. That's according to TVP World's guest Stephen Moore, founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project.
The level of technological advancement that's coming out of Ukraine is just breathtaking. You know, American weapons, especially the drones, really don't work over here. You know, they're very expensive and they don't work as well as the homegrown Ukrainian drones, which are, $500 to $1,000 for a kamikaze drone. So, you can either have governments send money or investors can come in and invest in this Ukrainian defense tech that the Europeans are using right now. They called the Ukrainians and said, hey, we've got some Russian drones coming in. Do you think you could send us some experts and some equipment about how to keep them out of our airports and out of our central cities?
The chairman of Bulgaria's State Reserve said fuel supplies are secure for at least 3 months, which is a crucial buffer as Washington's latest sanctions on Russian energy move closer to taking effect.
As we expected, the inspection concluded without finding any discrepancies in the required quantities. We conduct such checks regularly. This is a periodic check we perform. All quantities were physically verified, together with our colleagues from the customs agency, to ensure the highest possible accuracy of the results. No deviation from the listed quantities was found. All the quantities purchased with state budget funds are located within the country. These are the volumes maintained by the State Reserve Agency. They represent 30 days of reserves. Separately, for the remaining 60 days, more than 50% of the quantities are also inside Bulgaria. Given the gravity of the situation, we contacted our partner organizations abroad and the countries where the reserves are stored. Checks were also carried out there, so the reserves located outside the country are also available. These include gasoline, diesel fuel, and heating oil. The quantities are sufficient to cover 60 days of the country's total consumption, during which time the remaining stocks located outside our country will arrive, ensuring a total supply for 90 days. There are reserves located in Greece, the Netherlands, Italy, Hungary, and Slovenia.
Hungary obtained a waiver from U.S. sanctions on Russian oil and gas for at least a year. Now, TVP World spoke to an expert to better understand what this development means and what awaits Budapest after the exemption ends.
Orban cannot escape from these sanctions, and he is forced not only by the European Union but also by Trump somehow to diversify and move away from the Russian raw materials. So he cannot keep up with his current energy policy. I believe that we would be surprised how quickly the government could actually find some other ways to deliver those raw materials. So they are also obliged to keep some storage, especially when it comes to oil. So if anything extreme happens, for example, of some attacks on the infrastructure, which could happen at the current war circumstances, there are storages, and also beside that there are some options. So it doesn't the narrative of the Hungarian government that they are forced to use those Russian supplies are not really relevant.
This weekend, the United Kingdom marks the Remembrance Day. Established following the end of World War I, the holiday is reserved annually to honor members of the armed forces who have died in line of duty. At the Royal Albert Hall in London, King Charles led the royal family in the Royal British Legion Festival of Remembrance, also marking 80 years since the end of World War II. The event was organized to pay tribute to British military servicemen, past and present. Memorial events are scheduled to take place all around the Commonwealth, but also beyond its borders. In Poland, the British ambassador will lay flowers at the memorial for the crew of the B-24 Liberator bomber shot down over Warsaw while trying to aid the Warsaw Uprising. Romania is suffering from a wave of layoffs brought about by high taxes and rising energy costs, as well as weaker than expected growth. The country's officials say a necessary reconfiguration is also underway, which could cause further job cuts in the public sector.
High taxes and energy costs for businesses across Romania have led to a massive wave of layoffs.
The bills have increased. Normally, there shouldn't be layoffs before the holidays.
In the first 9 months of 2025, over 9,000 people lost their jobs, a more than 30% increase compared to the same period in 2024.
How can it be? Quite stressful and worrying at the same time for everyone.
Industry, IT and transport are the sectors of economy most affected by the layoffs, with further job cuts expected in energy and automotive component manufacturing. That's not all, however, as job cuts in the public sector are also being announced.
We have areas both in the local and central public administration that are requesting more employees, with good reason. At the same time, I understand that there are areas in which we should reduce staff, or better yet, reallocate them. I don't want to fire anyone at the Labor Ministry.
The Romanian government, alongside the country's president, say the layoffs, apart from tax and energy cost hikes, are motivated by a fiscal reconfiguration triggered by Romania's weaker-than-expected growth.
This fiscal reconfiguration, with certain nuances, was inevitable. Fortunately, there is a need for additional workforce on our labor market. You can notice that we have to bring in people from Asia for certain sectors. Of course, it's painful on a personal level, but it's a necessary reconfiguration.
Union representatives warned that widespread layoffs could reduce tax revenues while increasing unemployment benefits, urging the government to adopt economic stimulus measures.
The longest government shutdown in U.S. history continues despite a rare weekend session of the Congress. The reason behind the shutdown is a failure to agree on health care subsidies. Each year, the U.S. Congress votes on the federal budget. Now, if an agreement is not reached, funding for federal agencies is suspended. That means that many federal employees go without paychecks, while numerous institutions close or limit their operations. This year, thousands of flights have already been delayed or canceled altogether due to air control staff shortages. If the shutdown continues, air traffic might be cut by 20%, according to the U.S. Transportation Secretary. Now moving on to the world of sports. Poland secured a 1-0 win over Great Britain in the European Cup of Nations ice hockey tournament on Sunday, thrilling fans in the Polish city of Sosnowiec. During the tournament, Poland played 3 matches and finished with a total of 7 points in the final standings, placing first ahead of Italy, Great Britain and Slovenia. This is the inaugural season of the European Cup of Nations, a new format in which 18 national teams compete across various locations in Europe, divided into groups of 3 or 4 countries. The next series of tournament games is scheduled to take place in December. And that's all for this edition of World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Sky. Thanks for watching, and do stay with us here for more news and analysis.